your opinions on the reboot for Power Rangers, and what do you think is going to happen?
So for a fact, the execs at Netflix and the whole thing with like the Power Ranger property, they've been wanting to get away from Sentai for a super long time.
Right.
Unofficially, officially, but unofficially, they've been trying to get away from Super Sentai. But also, Super Sentai is also in its own creative lane right now, where some of the stuff they do is more at risk to be translated for us. Like they had a whole season in Sentai where they had like a bird creature, slender CGI character thing, and like Sentai has its own identity as far as being for the kids, where Power Rangers have always been limited by that.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, they've been losing money. Like even the whole Netflix Once a Ranger special was just what it was. I mean, outside of the fan base, it was a blink and you miss it. It was cool for what it was. If you had any type of attention towards it, you were just like, oh, cool, they reunited. And if you were really casual about it, you were just like, that's not the Pink Ranger I remember. So it's like this weird area where they just know that people just aren't familiar as Power Rangers, but they kind of know what it is. So I've heard different rumors. I've slightly heard that one. I mean, I know that's more of a recent one.
Yeah.
But the idea of introducing different teams through unknown, that's been floated around for a bit. I mean, unfortunately, it was like recently that the director of Cobra Kai, or not Cobra Kai, the Karate Kid movie, I guess he was tapped in to try to reboot it as well, or at least try to.
So and that was some of the insider information I actually got directly from a source, was that Hasbro was very upset with him to begin with. They hired him. He had pitched a great plan. And he just like never executed, as what I heard. And he came out recently and he said some things on Reddit of like his plans. Like he was kind of like more of a magical kind of thing. I don't know what he said. He's like had like magic elements to it. That he was gonna have Tommy, like it was a bad version of Tommy, kind of like Draken. I don't know if he said
it was basically Shattered Grid.
Was it? Okay. So
it was basically Shattered Grid.
And then what they told me specifically on that was that he was going to have a new team, not MPR, but the team that he was writing was almost like Samurai, and that Hasbro had hired him to design, like do the suit design, make the powers and all that stuff. And then after like a certain amount of time, he came back and told them, no, actually, I want my friend to do this. Even though he had already agreed to do it. So like when Hasbro came up to, what I had heard was what Hasbro came up to him and said, like, where are you at on this? It was always behind of where he was supposed to be at. Always. So that's what I heard. And then he came out on Reddit and said, like, recently, like, he had apparently been doing more and this and that, which kind of went in line with what I said, because he was going off of like, it was so preliminary still. Like so
exactly. So it's that part for me. So as far as some of those details, I couldn't confirm any of that, but here's the thing where people have to understand, like, whenever we toss around buzzwords like, oh, we had a conversation with Hasbro or we had a conversation with Disney, it's not like this huge meeting where all of representatives of Disney and Hasbro. A lot of times it's just an email. A lot of times it's just conversation. And then all of a sudden you could say like, oh, I was talking to Hasbro. You were talking to somebody from Hasbro. And yes, that person was probably going to pull the trigger for you and get it greenlit. But it's so easy to get lost in the sauce as far as we hear feedback and recounts of conversations, and conversations happen daily, my guy. Like, unfortunately, they just do. So anytime we get like a scoop as far as, oh, this was talked about, yeah, it also could have just been a subway lunch. You know what I mean? Where they discussed it, and we hype it so far up that we think it's like, oh, they were so close to doing it. They were so close to doing this. They probably were upset with them, but here's the other thing about this: like Hasbro, and this is calling a spade. They weren't really investing into Power Rangers, which is why they are kind of liquidating. We've had auctions lately just to try to recoup. You know what I mean? Like the writing is on the wall in terms of how fiscally compensating the property is, which is why they are kind of sourcing their IPs. Every time we get like a Megazord from a different toy company that you've never heard of and they like kick ass with it, you're just like, oh, how'd they get the rights to that? it's part of that reason.
Yeah.
So, and if this actually gets off the ground, fantastic. But I also know like there's so many things that have come close and nothing's happened, and I'm sure they might have been upset, but I'm sure they've been upset with a couple of people they've given that opportunity. You know what I'm saying? Like there's discussions that happen all the time. That's what
And
deep
that's why,
fans need to understand, and that's what casual fans need to understand, and that's what the comment section needs to understand, because they always say things like, "Just make Hasbro." There's always going to be a chain of command. There's
right.
never going to be talk to somebody named Hasbro. There's no guy named Hasbro with a name tag. It's like I got to talk to that guy.
And I think, as someone who's very started off as a Power Rangers content creator, and someone who's probably still considered one for many people, is that, a lot of people messaged me about what Jinsaku said recently, right? And they wanted me like to talk about it. And I was going to save it for this live stream, but I didn't want to jump on it because there have been other things that have been said before, especially during the Netflix, when it was under Netflix, that this was going to happen. We're going to have a female Red, Tommy was going to betray the team, like different stuff. Right. And I was like, none of that ever happened. You know what I mean? Like, so, and that was the thing. And the reason I didn't want to make a video just on what Jinsaku just said recently was because I didn't want to feel like I felt like I led on our audience with that, with unconfirmed reports. Right.
Sure.
And I made sure to go in and say, like, this is unconfirmed reports, right? Like,
doesn't matter.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter. You said it, right? So I figured that's why we could just talk about it in the roundtable here, and why I know there was some discussion why I didn't discuss Jinsaku's stuff, and it's among other things. It's partly that, and it's also partly like I can feel that I don't have to report on every single little Power Rangers thing right now because of the way we're growing as a brand for Legacy and Nerd. So that felt like one of those opportunities. Like I don't have to talk, I don't have to go and make a video immediately about this, about someone saying something may happen. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you're being responsible, and then
right, I'm trying to be,
and then number two, you're just, I don't know. I guess you're just not feeding it to the, because one of the longest like rumors as far as the possible reboot had to do with time travel. And I remember like one of the closest things that came about or didn't come about at all was just like, hey, we're going to introduce people who were Rangers from the future, but they have to go to the past to work with these other Rangers.
That was in a press release. That was in a press release.
That was a pretty that was floated around for a while before they just said, like, you know what, we're not doing it.
Yeah, that was when it's a movie, when it was supposed to be the movie.
The reboot, right.
Before they were going to do a Netflix series. That was when they were like, we're going to do a film.
And then to your point, like the Netflix stuff, there was stuff I was sitting on for like a while before Once a Ranger came out. And it was exactly what it was supposed to be. It was just a special. Yeah. Like people thought it was going to be this huge MMPR. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad to have it. There's no part of me that's not glad to have that what we have. You know what I mean? I mean, something's better than nothing. I mean, in my opinion, you know what I'm saying? But it was never going to be this, oh my God, they're bringing them back. They wanted it to be that. They pitched it as that, but the budget wasn't there. It was never there. And then JDF was the first one to say no. So.
And now I might not be. Oh, website, say that again. What did you say? Was the last thing you said?
JDF was the first one to say no.
For the Once a Ranger?
Yeah.
Once and Always?
Yeah.
Oh. I didn't know he was the first one to say no.
Well, he was, I mean, I don't know literally, but he was, I mean, he wasn't, at that point, he was retiring like Tommy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He wanted to push the Eric Reed thing for White Dragon.
Right. I guess, we heard from Deadline that this was supposed to have a bigger budget. Okay, so let me back up. So Deadline did an interview with the owner of Toy. And how they were going to do a global marketing push, right? So and it was this whole thing. And I actually want to ask you about this. I'm actually confused about this, but basically they're going to try to move Kamen Rider and Super Sentai to other markets, namely the European and the North American market, right? Which we know the North American market has its issues with Sentai due to licensing issues and Hasbro owning the rights, all those looks and the IP in America, right? And actually, and a lot of portions of the world as well. So they were trying to say, like, how are you going to go around that? And they basically said that for Super Sentai, I think what they're going to do with Super Sentai is almost reboot it for everyone else. I'm not saying reboot, like just get, don't lose all its history, but have a new starting point that they're marketing everywhere else besides, maybe Japan, right? So, and which got them to talk about, Super Sentai's um agreements, or not agreement, I guess it's a contract. So I think the things to clear things up before, because we had Saban for so long and Disney, you know, with Saban and Disney, I feel like Toei had more of a say of what they did because they would continue to want things from Toei, right? So when Hasbro bought it, I think it became very quickly known that Hasbro didn't want anything to do with Toei. And it's not from like, we don't like you perspective. It's like, we don't want somebody else dictating what we do with something we just paid $1 billion for, right? Like, we don't want that, right? But and that article, Toei confirms that basically they're not going to be involved whatsoever with the reboot that was happening over at Disney Plus, Hulu, right? So that brings, and I think that brings a lot of confusion because people think, well, you can't use any of the pre-established suits, and it's like, no, you can't. You can, because Hasbro owns that in North America, at the very least, right? And they probably own it in Europe and other markets with certain titles attached to it, right?
Yeah, the regions.
Right. So, and that, what I was going to confuse you is what people say is like Saban kept on re-upping his contract every time he wanted to do, continue a different stuff. Like he would up it the first couple of years, he re-upped it by like, for a new series, and then he started upping it for like, I want these new seasons, I want to adapt these. So he got maybe like 2 or 3 at a time. He would make a deal on those, right? Where Hasbro came in and said, we'll take Beast Morphers and Dino Fury, and then or we'll take Rhino Soldier and whatever Beast Morphers is, and or Go Buster, and we're good. You know what I mean? But those were holdovers from the Saban contract as well. That was fulfilling Saban's contract. So my question to you is that as far as you know, is that contract time based, or is it set in like that's it forever?
Honestly, I couldn't confirm. I really couldn't confirm.
I feel like that contract is so close knit.
Only because it could be either. It could be both. Like that's kind of the beauty and the disadvantages of contracts. You know what I mean? Sometimes it is you have to fulfill by X amount of time, and other times it's like while that contract's still active under ownership, you're just limited to what's in said contract, and we can't talk about anything until we go outside that contract.
Okay.
I'd be very surprised if it was a time thing, though.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, because one thing that was apparent with, like, at least with Hasbro, was like they were using the bare minimum. I mean, you also have to understand too, like once like Nickelodeon or New Saban, and it was on Nickelodeon. Once New Saban kind of got it, they stopped using the. I guess it was before that too, but like Bandai used to be synonymous with Power Rangers. And then ever since Hasbro got it, we thought like, oh, well, Hasbro's a toy company. Power Rangers is basically toys. This comes hand in hand. And all they did was, not to take it too far back in this podcast, but, all they did was kind of appeal to collectors, but there was no general appeal, which is why the last season of Power Rangers, not Dino Fury, Cosmic Fury, there was basically no toy line, because it wasn't making money, period.
Right.
So, I mean, I didn't really answer your question in any way, shape, or form in terms of like, because I can't.
We did. You said I don't know. I mean, and that's the thing. And I feel like nobody knows. That's the thing. And so I'm trying to, and that's what I've been trying to figure out, like on a just kind of like personal investigative, like,
no,
is it in perpetuity, or is it, it could be like, like, you don't use it, you lose it sort of situation, or is it like until 2035 or something like that? So that's what I've been trying to figure out. And because I know that's been the issue why people are like, well, why doesn't the Super Sentai air in America? Well, that's the agreement. They're not going to air Super Sentai in America because that's direct competition against Power Rangers, and they will not allow that. So that's why you don't have official means of watching Super Sentai or getting Super Sentai official. I mean, you can get it imported, but that's why it's not readily available in America, right? So
I wonder how that applies to like the Shout Factory stuff. I mean, they technically do release Super Sentai, but not like as obviously like as a current.
It's not current, and that's
a current show.
They're always 20 years plus, and each one of those seasons it was negotiated individually, each one. So like, and I think they have the opportunity to do it again. People are asked like, why can't we just Shout Factory do it? Well, like, it wasn't like they had the license to do for everything. They had to go in every single time
Mm-hmm.
and redo, do a new contract for it. And I don't think those, I don't know how lucrative that was, but I also don't know how expensive it was to do at the same time. So it's taking an old form and just put it on DVD or Blu-ray. Although we don't have Blu-rays, but Blu-rays on anything Power Rangers would be amazing. But yeah, I just, as far as when it comes to the reboot, I know a lot of people have been asking, like, what do I think about this? What do I think about this? And I think, and I've said this many, many times over, and why it's kind of hard to report on current things. It's really, really hard from a business perspective to see them move away from Mighty Morphin. Like it's at least from a starting point again. Like, and at least Mighty Morphin adjacent, right? So like the Power Rangers 2017 movie was like, that wasn't a complete copy, but it was something familiar. Like looking at these, like people want these. Like this is Carlos Dattoli's art, right? Well, amazing artist, and people look at these and like, why don't they do this? And they do want that. And the question is like, what do you guys think? And actually, I'm gonna move on to Tyler, because Tyler is more comfortable with Mighty Morphin and business and the current stuff and the current climate of how things are going. What do you think would work for the general audience rebooting a Power Ranger show?
Short answer: just go something completely left field and just start something fresh,
Okay.
something new. Um, I'd like to see something fresh and new. I don't want to see a retelling, reimagining. I mean, maybe down the line, connected to other seasons. Connected to saying, hey, like you said, hey, this is now sometime down the road. These were the fabled heroes of the past, or something like that. I think just for all parties involved, it'd be better just to kind of start something fresh and not try to do something that people are going to compare or have such high expectations because they're adapting, reimagining or rebooting something. I will say that I'm glad that it's not on Netflix, just because I've recently been watching a lot of like shows that Netflix has produced and they've canceled it after like 1 or 2 seasons. So it's one of those things where like I feel like they would just kind of like put it out there for the tax write-off and then just not do anything with it whatsoever again. So
the thing they keep on saying about where no matter where it's at is like a Stranger Things. They want it to be on the level of Stranger Things. Like
I hope to hell not, man, because it's been 10 years and they're finally ending that show. Like 5 seasons in 10 years, dude. Good Lord.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, I mean, I think Amazon would have been a good home. They've adapted really good, comic book shows really, really well. So I think it's Disney is. I mean, they got money, but we'll see how much Disney is willing to market it when they're now trying to market, in-game 2.0 here in the next couple of years. So it's one of those things where.
And I have to go look at what Deadline reported, because there's a bunch of niche stuff reported by the Wrap. Then some of it got confirmed by Deadline. But I'm pretty sure Deadline said also that this was going to have a higher budget than what Power Ranger seasons were used to. So I think I don't know if it was going to be Percy, but Percy Jackson's first season wasn't necessarily. It looks high budget, but it wasn't as high budget like as some of the other Disney Plus and Hulu shows, obviously, right? But Power Rangers has always operated on breadcrumbs. So anything more is a higher budget, really. So that's the thing, and that's how I think that's where fans are like, well, what does that mean? Because they've always operated on nothing. Does that mean like we're gonna see a Megazord CGI every episode and amazing DCGI, right. Or does it mean like we're gonna maybe a Megazord every 3 or 4 episodes sort of thing? You know what I mean? But which I actually think I would be okay with, because I think I'll talk about that in a second. But go ahead.
I do like the Percy Jackson showrunner. That's who sticks with it, because I haven't seen the show, and I vaguely remember the books from a time long ago, but I've only seen the movies. But I was listening to a buddy of mine's podcast, and he had a guest on there who like was a huge Percy Jackson fan, and the fact is the show, I guess, does the books better justice than the movies ever did. Kind of shows that obviously the showrunners actually want to put out a quality product and not just cannibalize something and turn it into something ridiculous.
Right.
So,
what do you think, Archer? Because I mean, I like Tyler's point of starting something fresh and new, and I think if they were to make that work, that would be ideal, right? So, but can you move away from Mighty Morphin? Like would that make business sense to you? Like, what do you think?
I mean, I was pretty. I think I had a controversial take even when Once and Always came out, where I was like, I felt like it didn't do anything for the fandom. Like I hated it. I was like, the fact I've actually, as a whole, my opinion of things has changed in the last 5 years, where I'm starting to understand the need and the place for casuals. Like, I'm starting to understand that you're always going to have the hardcore. The hardcore fan will be there. If I'm going to use Star Wars as an example, Kenobi will understand this one. The hardcore fan is going to watch Bad Batch, Tales of the Jedi, all these shows. So that's a guaranteed number. I don't care about them. You need to get the random person who thinks Star Wars ended with
Jedi.
not Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi, and nothing else has happened between that and Force Awakens. Like, that's the moneymaker, because
Exactly.
that's a larger group of people. So when Once and Always came out, I was like, this thing is doing nothing other than putting some of these characters back on the screen again. Cool. But I think we mentioned it before at some point, that's not even the same Pink Ranger. Like I'm
Right.
thinking about the casual guy who they're trying to get at the toy store or a Target. That person looks at Netflix and sees a random dude as a Red Ranger, a random girl as a Pink Ranger. He's like, this doesn't look familiar at all.
They don't know them. They just don't.
And where's the Green Ranger? That was my favorite one. Like, they have no clue.
And a considerable amount of the of the casual fans stopped watching when Rocky, Aisha, and Adam came in. Like, a lot.
Yep. While they were all in like 5th grade, they were like, I'm out. So like they're not going to just come back now. So to me, I am always going to be team Mighty Morphin. You know how I feel about the movie that came out in 2017. But I feel like, while I don't want a Stranger Things type of thing, unfortunately, it's a formula that's been working for some shows.
Right.
As you pointed out, Goosebumps. I had no desire to watch it. My wife was watching it. I sat down. I was like, oh, it's actually pretty good.
I watched it. It was good.
Stranger Things formula. Unfortunately, it's just something that it's hitting. And I hate the fact that it's hitting, because everybody's going to just copy it. Everybody's just trying to recreate Goonies, but I think you're going to have to do that. I think I think straight reboot. Don't do any kind of they're coming from this other dimension, whatever. If down the road this thing's a major hit and we want to entertain cross-dimensional stuff, by all means. But I think coming out of the gate, just cut your losses, go for the youth, go for the kids, and make something that they're going to want to watch. And then hopefully they get the parents to reconnect. And then we can do season 3 or 4. All of a sudden, Amy Jo Johnson shows up out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, that was her. The same way we were talking about Smallville earlier, the same way every time a cameo showed up, our parents were like, oh, that was my Lana Lane. Oh, that was my Flash TV show, like that kind of thing.
So I apologize. I don't want to take time away from Kenobi, but the reason why the Stranger Things and even arguably like the Cobra Kai or even like the Squid Game, like the one thing they all have in common is sensationalism, like a sensational trending. This show is hot.
Right.
So when you bring up Power Rangers right now, you might have a couple of reactions like, oh, I remember that, or hey, is that show still on? And prior to like 2 years ago, you would say like, yeah, it's still going on. But that's kind of the problem. You kind of just accept it as, oh, okay, it's still here or it's always been here, versus, oh, Power Rangers is back. You know what I'm saying? Or Power Rangers is new. There is that general acceptance that, oh, it's always been around type of thing, as opposed to it's viral again because it is that exciting. I love what Cobra Kai did, and not to. I'm gonna bounce around. I'm gonna keep it really quick, but like bouncing around in a couple of topics. The reason why I think like what James Gunn is doing is smart is it's very akin to My Hero Academia. We're just being thrusted into the world, right? Because that's a sensational new, as opposed to what's coming into being introduced to a world. We're being introduced to their world, but that's a sensation. You know what I mean? It's a new approach to it. Cobra Kai was able to invigorate the whole Karate Kid. Like, remember Karate Kid? I do remember Karate Kid. Well, it's back, and Johnny's hilarious. That whole thing. So just being able to talk about it like it's fresh, as opposed to it's because every time you had like a Ninja Steel, a Dino Charge, and things like that, I mean, technically that was every opportunity for it to be like a new sensation, but it wasn't, because it was a formula at that point. It was here's the new theme, here's the new gimmick. How do you change it from going, hey, here's the new gimmick, to Power Rangers is back and with like a passion? You know what I mean? It does take the casual fan to be excited about it. And unfortunately, I recognize that in order to first get the hook, but what's the sinker now?
What the sinker is, the formula. What the formula has changed in modern pop culture is that it has to be able to have the potential to go viral, and that's the thing. And I think that's what Power Rangers has struggled with, since the new social media modern age, right? And that's something they've never been able to do, and that's why we have our niche audiences of Power Rangers. Like, to kind of touch on what Archer said was, you'll have your diehards. And when I became a Power Rangers content creator, I thought our community was humongous, right? Like our hardcores. And then when I stepped out and I had reasons that I had to kind of sort of look inwards and be like, it's not that big. It's very, very small, compared to, look at General Kenobi with Star Wars and how many he went to Celebration, and every other person was a Star Wars content creator, which it's a very, very big brand, where Power Rangers isn't that. And Star Wars has been able to have viral moments with The Mandalorian and Andor, and just different shows that have been on. Maybe not so much Andor, but like definitely The Mandalorian. Where like Stranger Things, like the last season, that the floaty part, or where the girl was running away, Sadie King, I think her name's Sadie, or Sadie Sink, where she was running away, that became super viral. Or Eddie, our Human Torch, doing Metallica on top of the house. All these like super moments that had these viral potentials that did go viral, which elevated those brands even higher during the social media age, which is what you're going to have. And you can't just have a good show, good actors, and the right platform. You have to have all those things, and the potential to go viral, and social media connections, whether it be through your actors, doing all these extra things now to make these shows bigger, because it's not the same.
People need to talk, period. You need to have people talking about it. How do you take Power Rangers from lukewarm, and you kind of accept that it's here, or you kind of accept that it's not on a casual level, to Power Rangers is back? Or, do you know what Power Rangers is? It's doing this thing. How do you turn it into that?
We have the answer. The answer's been there for almost a decade at this point, and it was reintroduced to us with Stranger Things. It needs to take a more mature turn. Yeah. Like, kids can handle a more mature show. Stranger Things, all those moments you mentioned, a kid died in almost every one of those scenes. And the kids were able to handle that. And when's the last time that Power Rangers was buzzworthy and trending before TikTok was a thing?
No, that's a great point. But also, there's an interesting question that you asked earlier, D. Like, and I apologize, take it back as soon as I say this, but you're asking, like, why, when fans say, why don't we just do artwork like that? Why don't we just do that? And even with like the 2017 movie, and I know I shared it with you, D, like, they were restricted with what they were allowed to do because of bleeding into other territories. Like, there's a reason why the Megazord doesn't look like a Mega or a Zord. It looks kind of like a hodgepodge of, it doesn't look like Transformers, and it doesn't look like Pacific Rim, because they were told to not make it look like Transformers or Pacific Rim because it looks too Voltron-y. The only problem is Power Rangers Zords are basically Voltron. So what do you do after that, right?
Right.
So I guess the point is, like, in terms of the mature audience, now we're getting into a territory of making the IP bigger versus the original baseline and the foundation of the IP, which has always been the toys. Now, arguably, Stranger Things, Squid Games is globally known now. So the property is there. So the merchandising is there. Merchandising is there. versus something that was known as a toy brand. So I feel like we probably have to step away a little bit as a toy brand, and now we get into a merchandise brand. Because if you're gonna go toy first, you're gonna get what we're gonna get, which is an acceptable kids commercial for 20 minutes per episode, and that's what we've gotten. You know what I'm saying? So I would love to get a mature version of Power Rangers. I would love for that to be the focal point, but at that point, you're focusing on it being a bigger IP and not the source of it, which is like a toy commercial. Right. And I'm not saying you can't do both. I'm not making that argument at all. It's just that it's a completely different approach. It's not like Stranger Things and Cobra Kai and Squid Games. And I'm only mentioning that because, you know, they were big. They're huge. Right. But it's not like they're approaching their episodes like, hey, we could sell toys off this. We could sell toys. They do sell toys off of it now. I mean, hell, you've had TMNT crossover with Stranger Things. You've had a whole bunch of crossover. You had Cobra Kai crossover with Power Rangers. I don't know if you ever got those Lightning Collection figures, but they have a Johnny Lawrence figure and all that. I guess my point is, if you're going to make it mature, like it has to be all the way. Like treat it as the fantasy sci-fi genre that it is, and not it's a toy commercial that happens to be about fantasy and sci-fi, which also has like rubber suits.
Right.
I'd also like to weigh in on this, if that's okay. Don't want to cut you off, Daniel.
No, good.
So I think the other element for all the shows that we're talking about, like I can also include like Arcane, League of Legends, things that have already, you know, like their own fandoms that they then made, you know, a show about. These all went viral, not just because of how like well they're made, but they have excellent music, trending audios. Like Power Rangers is very cheesy. No one wants to do like a cosplay sound to that or make, you know, like that's not going to go viral on social media. It's things like that yes, it doesn't need to be all the way mature. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And I think we're missing that element of like, if it goes all the way, like maturity and has that realism of like, okay, this battle is actually a battle. There's actually stakes to it. You know, we're actually fighting a villain, versus like, oh yeah, monster of the week. Woo. You know, I think that would definitely help. Right. And it's fine for it to still keep some of its cheesiness, you know, that might bring some of the nostalgia back, right? You know, maybe for the parents if they're watching it and they're like, oh yeah, I remember some of that iconic lines if we bring some of them back. But it's stuff like that it needs to go viral, but it also has to have something to connect to and inspire the fan artists, which if you notice, it's Power Rangers doesn't really do that. There's not a lot of Power Rangers merch. There's not a lot of, like from the fan art side, you don't see it at conventions. You don't see a lot of Power Rangers cosplayers aside from, you know, like Ranger Stop or Morphicon or other ones. And they also, I mean, just the way things are, aside from these auctions that we get to actually see the suits, it's really hard to make and or acquire the suits. They don't make it easy. So it's not a cosplayable thing, whereas Stranger Things, you can put together that cosplay pretty easily. It's accessible.
Well, to bring you to a point, and I do want to get to Jose because I think Jose.
Yeah, no, that was my last point.
Jose, was that Power Rangers in particular, or at least the brands that have been with them, and I think Saban had done it had started to do it, then he sold to Hasbro. Is that you look at these other ones like Cobra Kai, Stranger Things, and stuff like that? They work with the content creators, like me. Like if I were like a Cobra Kai content creators, they work with them and getting them access to get them exclusive content to help them push out for it to be more relevant, right? And I think it's the problem with the Power Rangers is why you don't see a whole lot of cosplays at a convention that has no Power Rangers, because it's not as relevant as Captain America or Deadpool or Wolverine or something like that. You know what I mean? It comes to the point of relevancy, and that's the thing. So
Yeah,
Power
Rangers doesn't hire people to walk around conventions.
And that's the thing, and even Hasbro was very, very
cheap.
Well, no, they didn't want to acknowledge us whatsoever.
They didn't even show up. They didn't even show up for the last one or two Power Morphicons, to be honest with you.
And that's the thing, and they don't acknowledge the people that are helping them, like me and Fan Club and Six Ranger and all these amazing content creators and stuff like that. That don't they don't we're just like nothing to them, and that's been the issue with at least the last couple of years.
The Hasbro Ghostbusters team does that. Yep. They acknowledge.
Yeah. Well, but they've learned from that now too, because they're going to your Ghostbusters Day and stuff like that, and look how well they're doing. Remember, I made a meme like a year ago where it was like, that girl, where the guy's looking back at the girl, and it was Ghostbusters, and it was like not, and they were holding Power Rangers' hand. You know what I mean? So like that's the thing with that. But I do want to touch with Jose, because Jose's in a fandom that has a very, very interesting history where relevancy, pissed off relevancy, all that stuff. Yeah. Most of the time. I want to know your idea of what the reboot should do, and the kind of like how to make it more, I guess, more relevant, like Star Wars has been, without pissing off the fans, like what Star Wars has done.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's the real trick, right? Like we've mentioned here, you're always gonna have the hardcores, right? And the hardcores are not gonna accept anything except exactly what they saw as kids, exactly what they think the story should be, exactly with the cast they think it should be, with the suits exactly the way they think it should look, right? And so I mean, let's be honest, guys, that's really tough to nail down. Why? Because it was done already once, right? If you want that same thing, you kind of have to go back to that, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. So it's always going to be hard. It's always going to be an uphill battle with that. Star Wars, very much the same. Now, the only good thing I feel that Star Wars has been doing lately, to various degrees of success though, but I think the mentality is correct. They're finally starting to try to pick lanes, in the sense of like, okay, we're going to make a show, about a rebel, and that was Andor. And you know what? There's not going to be a single lightsaber in it, like throughout the entire show. And we're going to stick to that. And that's going to piss off a lot of people. But guess what? It's also going to get, ovation from a lot of people and a lot of content creators, and maybe some new people will pick it up and be like, oh, all right, it's not just, space wizards and giant ships. Like there's some heart to Star Wars, right?
It also had quality. My God, Andor does have
right?
quality.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so, right? So all this has to be obviously, backed up with a little bit of money at least, and and some good elements there, right, for the actual production. So to your point, I think that one is you kind of do have to up the notch a little bit in terms of the maturity level, right? As we've said here, kids can handle it. And also that opens up possibilities to create, more content, which is a whole other branch of the project that definitely needs to be addressed. Same thing, right? There's too few, successful content creators like keeping this stuff alive, right? As we've talked about, Ghostbusters has kind of looked over the fence and be like, huh, that didn't quite work out. How about we try this, right? And they've been doing okay, right? They've been eating good lately, because again, they recognize the importance of, hey, ever so often, guess who keeps buying the toys? Guess who keeps back in the HasLabs? These dudes. How about we go talk to them for a little bit? Once a year. That's all we need, right? Just keep us going. And yes, like you said, every show has to hit. Now every show kind of has to hit, a certain quota of nostalgia, right? When it comes to like sci-fi, when it comes to like fantasy, and so establish your universe, right? Season 1 and 2, season 3, okay, maybe we get a cameo here and there, right? Maybe we get, start playing with an alternate dimension. Maybe we peek into, a team that's dedicated, to go through the multiverse. And if you want, you can branch out to do that, right? But you got to have a solid foundation here, because unlike Star Wars, you're probably not gonna have 3-4 shows to cover your universe, right? You're probably just gonna have the one shot, and you have to find that balance, right? The balance of having something original in the first and second season, cemented, right? Like this is our identity within the show. Then maybe you can start playing around, a little bit. Um, but to your point, let's be honest, guys, the hardcores are never going to be happy. All right, that's just the way it is, right? And I've seen that, time and time again. But if you can get them to say, okay, that was cool, right? You're over, you can call that a win, basically,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
If you get them to say, you know what, I like the way that Megazord looks, or you know what, I kind of like the way the suits are done. Like if you get those small quote unquote victories out of your hardcore audience, you're good, right? The casuals should be, a little bit easier, right? Because honestly, and I'm gonna go there very quickly, Acolyte, right? Star Wars, probably the most hated project, in the history of Star Wars at this point. It made people stop talking about The Last Jedi, which I never thought was possible. Um,
Hilarious.
yeah,
Hilarious.
but even them, right? Even the most like outspoken, haters, exactly. Uh, they were like, "Oh, dude, that lightsaber fight, that was dope, right?"
Right.
It's
Good.
like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's like I like that. Give me more of that, right? Less of literally everything else in the show, but give me more of that. That was cool.
Well, they
Or
did the thing where everybody is like, why don't they ever do that sort of thing with
exactly,
the
right?
reunite I night sort of thing, which
Exactly, right? And or certain other elements, right? Like, oh, how come we never saw the lightsaber whip that we saw for literally 1.7 seconds
yep.
in the show. But those kind of things, right? Like, it's like, oh, I guess we never saw a Jedi unalive himself, right? Like that's never been done. Like, holy crap, I didn't know
Yeah.
that was a thing, right? So again, if you can get sort of those like enough of those small victories out of your hardcore group, then you've done your work, right? Like I said,
It creates the buzz.
exactly, right? So now you got people saying, it's like, you know what, man, like the new reboot, it's not exactly for me, but they did do this particular thing very good, right? So maybe y'all should go check it out and like you know like form an opinion on your own, right?
No.
Like if you can get the hardcores to do that, then you definitely got a shot at
That's a really, really good point.
Just because it's like fresh in my head, in regards to what Jose brought up, and actually what everybody brought up regarding, what would make Power Rangers hot. There's one thing we're ignoring, and I didn't think about it until I was listening, and it's the directives. Like it's easy to say like make Power Rangers darker, make Power Rangers this, make Power Rangers that, but when for a fact their directives are making it so that they're episodic, actually to Cat's point, monster of the week, and not followable. They're actually given direct because that was part of the beauty of Mighty Morphin, and all the way up until Space, and even beyond that, it was a soap opera. It was our soap opera. We
Mhm.
were invested in these characters. I mean, Tommy and Kim kissed for the first time, like, oh, buddy, you know what I'm saying? Like we were excited about these characters because we followed them. We knew when there was a power lost, and like, oh, Jason has a shield now. What does all that have in common? A trackable, invested storyline.
Yeah.
They're literally told, and this is not conjure, this is actually for a fact, they're literally told they can't really have multiple part episodes anymore. You're supposed to be able to jump into a Power Ranger episode as if you were watching it for the first time.
Mhm.
So you're not necessarily going to have like an overarching. I mean, yeah, eventually there's a season finale, and then maybe the last few parts kind of connect. But in general, when 90% of the season is just jump in and enjoy the ride, and hey, check out this thing they use to transform, and the toy that they use to fight the robots and the monsters and stuff like that. It's designed to be episodic. So what does that feel like? A cartoon, which works in terms of like you might know the IP, you might know the property, but you're also not invested. So as much as we're talking about season one, do this, season two, do this, season three, do this, that thread line thinking in terms of having a story you want to follow is the one thing we all have in common. The looking forward to the next episode because they left off here in the last episode. They introduced
Exactly.
someone new. So therefore, what's happening with this new person? A new plot device. What's happening? So something that you could look forward to weekly, monthly, binge to where you want to watch it all at once. That's the one thing Power Rangers doesn't have, which is an investment
That
approach to it.
yeah,
You know what
I
I'm
sorry.
mean,
saying?
look at those, like Green with Evil. Like that's why
Exactly. One of
everyone
the
remembers that.
most
Yeah.
one of the most referenced multiple parters in Power Rangers.
Yep.
But that's just my point. Like you could clown soap operas all you want, but it's also like General Hospital. No shameless plug there. But but I'm just saying, like,
Mhm.
it's one of the longest lasting shows for a reason,
Right.
even if it is cheese. But the point is, you're invested in if it's a cliffhanger like ending and a person has a gun, like wait, what happened? Damn, you know what I'm saying? Power Rangers
Yeah.
doesn't have that because they're told not to have that. So I think that's a very important thing to acknowledge, where it is supposed to, it's intended to exist. I mean, they kind of tried to do it with I'm sorry, Cosmic Fury in terms of throwbacks, but at that point they didn't care. They kind of had the RPM. This is your last hurrah. We'll make original suits and just we'll kind of package it all together.
Right.
We'll put the ribbon on it.
Mhm.
So I think one of the most important things that needs to happen before we get any particulars as far as tone, darkness, let's get a storyline that we can follow. Let's
Yeah.
have stuff that connects to be able to follow through to a season, to want to see the next season. Let's
Exactly.
get that going.
And having something like that will not only spark discussions on social media, but also like threads on Reddit. And you can just have these things that will continue the conversation and continue to push it, and stuff that will just spark um, and push it naturally. So
Right.
you don't
Dialogue. Mhm.
exactly.
Right.
So that's the big obstacle. That's a big obstacle when it's not that they kind of do it; they're told to do that now. So under new, I don't know, not just management. Again, it's not McDonald's. It's not like one guy named Hasbro. They just have to agree, like, hey, let's turn this into an ongoing saga. I mean, look at the CW Flash verse, or the Arrowverse. Those connective tissues paid off in a big way all the way to Lois and Superman, or Superman and Lois, if you were invested enough, because they had storylines that even if certain seasons weren't your favorite, you still wanted to know what happened.
Well,
Mhm.
Yep.
that's a good point. And I think we're all kind of hoping that's going to happen because it's not Hasbro or E1 doing it. It's being with, getting real showrunners and not just like, okay, we need to sell this toy this week. So, focus, go to the Sentai episode that has this and use that. You know what I mean? So, it's making that episodic, like you're talking about with like Percy Jackson. I watched the first half of Percy Jackson. So, of the first season. So they were building up, laying their foundation when I was watching. So I think that would be really easy you would think that would be really easy for Hasbro to do, but I think the thing is you need someone to care, and need someone to care enough to like hand it off to someone that can do it better, and at the same time not trying to, I don't want to say like put your hand in it, but like understand what someone else is trying to do to make it better for you. Does that make sense? I don't know.
They take the investment at this point. When Hasbro bought it, they bought the formula. They didn't really change what Nickelodeon did, or what Neo Saban did with Nickelodeon. They bought the formula. They aimed to maintain the formula, not improve on the formula. And the formula at that time was new power set, individual episodes, nothing connecting. A kid needs to be able to jump in without worrying about storyline. Just, I like the characters. Here's the gimmick. Cool fighting.
Right.
But us, when we talk about the Zordon era, when we talk about Green with Evil, when we talk about Time Force, we're talking about seasons where you're invested to see what happened with these characters. We don't have that anymore.
They also bought it at a time where the climate was a little bit different. It was changing at that time. So they bought it when, the MCU was already established. It got established in 2010, right? But like it started to get really, really, really big like in 2018, leading up to Endgame, right? And then you had the DC come in with Man of Steel, was at 2013. came in, and that did, and then you got to Batman versus Superman, which that was 2015, which is when Hasbro and 2016, which was when Hasbro and Saban were in talks, right? So they bought the brand at a time when everything got way more mature, was churning more mature. And then they had, I think they were thinking like, we have the thing right here that's been going good for 30 years. And then in 2018, 19, everything just went mature. You know what I mean? Like it just went that way. Like remember Deadpool 2, like, oh, you're DC dark. You know what I mean? Like that's how it went. And maybe it was kind of bad timing on their end, because I guess Hasbro bought it 2018, right? So like that was where I kind of at that time where everything was like, I was looking at the numbers when I was looking at the numbers for like Brave New World, even some of the like besides Civil War, but like Ant-Man, like all those Marvel movies that were coming out, they weren't necessarily like humongous events like they are now, right? Like they were amping up to Endgame. Endgame was like the pantheon of everything, but like they were still like just a movie that was being released at that time, because it's when you got to Endgame, you saw the end result of everything, but you saw like it go to like, we just killed everyone in the world, or half the people in the world. You know what I mean? Like who thought a Marvel movie would do that? Going back to Spider-Man in 2001. You know what I mean? Like these are, I think the climate just changed on them, and they didn't know what to do with it, and they got stuck, and they were like. And not only that, they lost the main CEO that believed in the brand, and the other guy that came in was like, I like cards, and you know what I mean. So, it's just, I think it's been, and it also like COVID, the changes in the political climate, the changes in the economic climate, and the changes in the perspective of the audience as well. You know what I mean? So like looking at, I can tell you like, the number one word that people try to say on my stuff that I don't let it go through is woke. You know what I mean? So like everyone is talking about that. And so not everyone, but like, half, I would say half is talking about that. But, making something that appeals to everyone right now is impossible. Look at the Snyder Cult going against Superman. Like, it's a Superman movie. It looks so good. It looks so fun. Yet some people were like are keen on trying to get to destroy it, because that is the climate that we live in now. Which wasn't what it was. I can go into a bunch of different discussion, but that climate wasn't there, pre 2016.
Real quickly, like everybody's making phenomenal points here. What's gonna make Power Rangers work is it has to be its own thing. It can't be a retelling. To Kat's point, she's talking about Arcane. Arcane did something different. It didn't follow like the basis of League of Legends. It created its own story, and it wrapped up. Like it's one of those things where like it came like a flash in the pan, was great, did 2 seasons, and now it's done. Now they're doing a spinoff with other characters because you have such a wealth of characters to do that. Star Wars reinvented itself. The Mandalorian was like this space spaghetti western. Andor was the fight to power and conformity and the Empire. The spy and those kind of movies. Just like Rogue One, I think is probably one of the better Star Wars movies out there because fantastic. It is something different. Yeah. So Star Wars reinvented itself. And that's what kept it fresh. That's what kept it. People coming to it. Like I have a friend who is in no way, shape, or form a Star Wars fan, but he's like, oh my God, Andor was the best thing I've ever seen, and I'm like, cool, well, you have a fan there. Like you mentioned, you have to appeal to the casuals, and that's exactly what you need to do. Day one fans are going to line up. I'll be at the Superman movie. I'm not a Superman fan, but I'm a DC fan, so I'll be there. You don't need that movie to appeal to me, because nothing you're ever going to do is ever going to make me like take off a Batman hat, throw a Superman hat on. But that's me. But you have to really appeal to the casuals. You have to do something fresh. You talk about viral moments. Stranger Things is very viral. Like with was it a Kate Bush song or whatever it was? It's making her billions of dollars because she still owns the rights to it. So hell yeah, if that's ever a thing, don't ever sell your rights. And then of course the Eddie stuff. And yes, I mean you have to find what works for something, whether it's a viral moment or reinventing.
I know I've been doing a lot of talking, and I apologize, which is my way of saying I'm gonna keep on talking. Anyways, I'll make it really quick. Like, but to Tyler's point, Mandalorian, everything you just mentioned, brought in new audiences, but it also still kept something that you recognize. I think one of the biggest balls, one of the biggest balls that we dropped was the 2017 movie, because that was the last time in a long time that casual fans were going, "Oh, dude, you remember Power Rangers? Oh yeah, and dude, and correct me if I'm wrong. I know at least in my orbit, my circles, people I talk in the industry, casual fans really enjoyed the 2017 movie. Where they didn't capitalize was the ones who wanted to recognize Power Rangers didn't recognize it as Power Rangers. And that was kind of the problem, because people were talking about the 2017 movie to the point where, oh yeah, I remember Power Rangers. Oh yeah, I remember. Let's check this out. And the everyday person liked it just fine because it exceeded expectations. But the ones who wanted to recognize something in it only kind of recognize the attempts. Like, yeah, there's a giant head there, but it's, you know, it's very Man of Steel. It's not the floaty head. Okay, cool. Goldar is kind of weird. There's no it's morphing time. So to your point, Tyler, I'm just saying, like, I think you're right on track in terms of bringing the new ones in. You could read us the phone book, DJ. I will take that as a backhanded. I could put you to sleep, and you know what? Anytime, I got you. But yeah, just having it recognizable as still Power Rangers. But man, the 2017 buzz was real. Yeah, I don't know where y'all were at the time, but it was real. Like, it was enough for casuals to kind of be like, let's check it out. But
I was entering the fandom at that time. Yeah,
I was day one in the theater. I saw it that Thursday night, man.
I did too.
Show and I was there. Yeah.
Same.
Now, unfortunately, what didn't happen was it wasn't enough of a buzz piece after you came out the theater. The only thing that came out was like, that was better than I thought it was. And I like what they kind of did with it. But you didn't leave going, man, Power Rangers is back.
Right.
So it was somewhere in the middle where the casual fan was curious about it, but the fans were like, but I don't really recognize it.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I don't even think I left Iron Man like that. And, you know, that was and like, oh my God, like, that was crazy. That was a crazy good movie. You know what I mean? I think where it got to me, where it was like, you know, they kept on doing, you know, they said like, okay, this was connected and this is connected, you know what I mean? Or see him in Incredible Hulk and stuff like that. Like, okay, like, it took that extra step. And I think, and again, at that time, it was, you know, Marvel had kind of introduced that idea, and they were, you know, Power Rangers very much was trying to do that to build their own world, right? But they didn't like. I think they were expecting it to have the same reaction as like I just said, like, it's for Iron Man. You know what I mean? Like, that was really good. I hope they make another one. And
but they even reference Iron Man in that movie, and that's kind of the problem. Like, it tried to be so many things, but it didn't embrace Power Rangers.
Right. It just didn't. I don't think. Well, I think it was a very good movie, and it did have its problems, and it does have its great parts of it, and most of it was the cast that it had, which is, it was crazy how big that cast has gotten since then. But it just
you're talking about Becky G.
Not only that, but also like looking at like Dacre Montgomery and Campbell, like, I mean, those even RJ, like, all of them have gone on to do like really big things. Ludi Lynn's Luke Kane now, like, everything's
brilliant performers. Dacre Montgomery is legitimately a great actor.
He's gonna win an Oscar someday. Like,
100%. He's fantastic as a performer. As an artist, he's so effing good. Sorry,
but
one of my top fan casts for Jason Todd.
Well, he's probably gonna be in Star Wars now. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just saying it didn't really. I think they assumed way too much, and I think we talked about this before. But like, they assumed that they were going to have the 8 movies. Like, this was a done deal, and then, you know, they didn't make the money that, you know, they wanted to make on merchandise, and that basically what did it. But like you said, like, I remember inside, like, it was two different worlds, man. Because at that time I was entering the fandom, you know what I mean? So like, I remember in the fandom, it was like, man, this is crap, you know, it does nothing, is the same or whatever, this and that. And then, you know, everybody kind of on the outside was like, oh, that was a good movie. You know what I mean? But I think that's the problem. Like, oh, that was a good movie. And it wasn't like you said, it wasn't like that changed the world.